Welcome to the Neeley School of Business. My name is Craig Crossland. I'm the John V. Roach Dean of the Neeley School here. I want to welcome everybody, but I especially want to welcome those of you from across campus. We're delighted that you're able to make it across the street, hopefully safely, and join us here in Neeley. This is one of our premier speaker series here, Against All Odds. And we appreciate all of the speaker series we have here, but this one in particular I think really resonates, and I think it's because of the subtitle, Stories of Grit and Determination. We have had a college, in a business school since 1944, and we've been offering some form of business programming here at TCU for about 140 years, so back to 1884. In that time, we've seen a lot of change. People have come and go, programs have come and go. But I think there's been some consistencies as well. And one of those consistencies, I think, is reflected in what we call the Neeley Promise. The Neeley Promise is that the Neeley School of Business unleashes human potential with leadership at the core and innovation in our spirit. And what I like about that in this speaker series is I think this is a great encapsulation of the Neeley Promise. What I love is that we get to hear from top-level leaders, but also about the innovative strategies that they personally have used to overcome some of the challenges that they have inevitably faced along the way, and the necessity of using grit and determination. I won't introduce our guest, Ms. Kalisha Holland, for today, because that'll come in just a sec. But what I want to do at the moment is I want to thank two different groups. First, I want to thank the Office of Inclusive Excellence here in Neeley and its leader, Professor Ann Tasby here. Would you please join with me in thanking Professor Tasby? I also want to extend my deep thanks and appreciation to the sponsor of this event, Bank of America. We could not do this speaker series without their support, their moral support, and certainly their financial support. So if you would please join with me in thanking Bank of America. I'm now proud to hand over to a member of the Bank of America employee team, Mandy Kaiser.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a beautiful day, and I know there are probably many other things you'd rather be doing, but you picked a great option this afternoon to come join us for the Against All Odds speaker series. Raise your hand if you've been to the series before. A few of you, and we've got some new ones too. Thank you for coming today. Every speaker we've had has been dynamic, and this one will be no less dynamic. You're in for a great treat this afternoon. What I will say is afterwards, if I can answer any questions for you about Bank of America, whether from a job perspective, whether I need to know, I want to work with companies, I want to work with individuals, I need a bank account, whatever it is, please let me know. I'm happy to help you on that as well. So sit back and enjoy the afternoon and this speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Mandy is always so, she's always so humble. I just have to do a little small brag on Bank of America for a minute, if you guys will, point of privilege, okay? The reason this series is so important and pivotal and different for TCU is that we not only have an opportunity to showcase diverse points of view from top leaders from around the world, we also use this series to help fund our students in need. We have students at TCU who actually have meal insecurity. And so this series provides us with the opportunity to provide them with meal support. In addition to that, as you know, when you're in the business world, the way that you look matters. So if you can't afford business attire, it can be a real inhibitor in fully taking advantage of your career. And so we talked to our students and we listened. And what they told us was that inhibitor of not having business attire was a real challenge for choosing to major in business in the business school. So we said, no, that doesn't work. So we've actually established a fund that helps students in need afford business attire. And this speaker series helps us to make those opportunities possible for our students. So again, rousing round of applause for Bank of America. I'd also like to thank the TCU leadership team that's present from across campus, as Craig mentioned. I am just delighted at the level of support that we've received from TCU from the very beginning. from our board of advisors to our Inclusive Excellence Advisory Board. I mean, from top to bottom, people have said, this is important work, and we're delighted that we're able to do it together with you. So thank you for being here. And now I'm going to turn it over to Shannon Fletcher. Shannon is actually one of our leaders from our Neeley Board of Advisors, and I'll allow Shannon to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Ann. Thank you, Dean, for all your support and the work that we're doing here today. Again, my name is Shannon Fletcher, and I'm a proud 2014 Executive MBA alum here at TCU at the Neeley School of Business, and I also proudly serve on the Neeley Board of Advisors, and so thank you all for the work that we're doing. But today, I have the most important honor of introducing our moderator and panelists for today. First, Tracy Renee Williams, communications expert, speaker, and leadership coach of over 20 years experience helping leaders master communication and building trust. And she's a woman who absolutely needs no TCU introduction, because if you're TCU royalty, you know Tracy Renee Williams. As founder and CEO of Traycom Development Group and co-founder of The Collective, she's on a mission to equip leaders with tools and confidence and support them to create the need to really clarify and impact and be a trusted voice in leadership and communication. She's been featured on NBC5, Forbes, and as an official TEDx speaker. Most importantly, she's a dual degree alumna of Texas Christian University, where she has served in various roles, including president of the TCU National Alumni Association and member of the Bob Schieffer College of Communication Board of Advisors. And then our panelists, Kalisha Holland, leader in HR, finance, operations, marketing, philanthropist, and over 20 years of experience in railroad industry. As a Chief Diversity Officer and Inclusion and General Director of Talent Acquisition at BNSF Railway, she leads company-wide initiatives to attract, engage, and develop and train a diverse workforce, and we know how important that is in times such as these, including just a censoring of belongingness and inclusion here at BNSF. She's a member of the National Association of Railway Businesswomen, an organization to foster female leadership within the railroad industry. She holds a bachelor's degree in political science and history from Ottawa University and an MBA from Washburn University and a master's degree in MIS from Friends University. Personally, she is extremely active in her local community through her involvement in various nonprofit organizations. And if you're looking for her on the weekend, her most important title is Mom in Chief, and you'll see her on the baseball field, basketball court, football field, soccer field, and in any show choir audience, cheering on her pride and joy, Kate and Ty, along with her husband, Stephen. Both of these women represent grit, perseverance, and just are simply phenomenal, and each of which I am proud to personally call my sisters and friends. And so now I welcome Tracy Williams and Kalisha Holland. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I loved that because I'm a Baptist girl, so that was good. All right. I am just so excited to be here today and to have this conversation with Kalisha. We've known each other now 13 years. So when being up here is just such a privilege for me to be able to guide this conversation so you all can hear her story. We were able to spend some time with some students earlier today. I have a feeling my questions are going to be softballs compared to the questions that the students prepared for Kalisha, but they got a chance to hear about her incredible journey at BNSF, a little bit about her personal journey, and you all are in for a treat as she walks us through how she has managed her life and career, overcome some odds to be in the seat that she's in today. So buckle up, let's get ready. I'm going to kick us off with our first question. And I know a lot of times we start these conversations, tell us about your career journey, et cetera. But we know that leadership begins before we ever step foot into our first office, the first boardroom that we might be in. We know it begins way before that. So can you tell us a little bit about how your upbringing, the family that you have, how they've contributed to who you are as a leader in the journey that you've taken?
Absolutely. But before I jump into that, I want to just extend my deepest gratitude to Ann and TCU for asking me to be here today. I'm very honored to be here celebrating Black History Month with all of you. I'm also extremely happy to have both Shannon and Tracy, women who I both love and admire, here with me sharing this special occasion. I want to thank my husband for always showing up and supporting me, as well as my family and friends who always come in droves. So thank you all for coming out today. I also want to take an opportunity to thank all of my BNSF colleagues who are here in this extremely busy time. I also want to call out our Senior Vice President and Chief HR Officer for taking time out of her day, Judy Carter. Really means a lot to me. And then, of course, my sisters that aren't necessarily blood, but my Jack and Jill moms and my sisters from the Fort Worth Links Incorporated for taking time out of your day. So thank you for that. I also want to just call out the importance of programs like this. It's just an honor to be here, but also meeting some of the students earlier and knowing that this is definitely making a difference in not only your student life, but it's going to make a huge difference in your career. So thank you for that. As mentioned, I work for BNSF Railway, and if you don't know, BNSF Railway is one of the nation's largest freight providers. We employ over about 35,000 team members across 28 states and 3 Canadian provinces, and we move large bulk commodities as well as things as small as your iPhone, which I see some of you have out right now. So please make sure you get me at a good angle, please. And of course, one of the things I'm most proud of is our CEO. She is a twice alum of TCU. She's the first female CEO of a Class 1 railroad, Katie Farmer. So of course that doesn't answer Tracy's question, but I just wanted to start out with a moment of gratitude and thanks, because as all of you know, you can't get anywhere by yourself. And it's those people in this room, especially those who took time out of their day today. It really means a lot to me. So let's talk about my family. So I am actually one of 6. I have sisters and one brother, and I am actually a product of a divorced household, so I have 2 sets of parents. And I always point that out because instead of that being an obstacle for me, it actually turned into one of our biggest blessings because we had 2 sets of parents, 2 sets of families that supported us along the way. I know some of you are listening and you're like, is that a Texas draw or what type of draw is that? I'm actually from Kansas. My parents still live in Kansas. And when I think about my childhood, it definitely brings back some very powerful memories. My grandfather, he was an Army veteran, and he instilled in us the importance of education and work ethic. My grandmother, she was the first woman I knew who owned a business. She had a beauty salon. Everyone know what a beauty salon is? Okay. And she owned that for over 50 years. And I can tell you all, there were countless hours of me under that dryer that always makes me smile because she's no longer with us. But I say that because she was instrumental in teaching us about spirit, faith, and believing in yourself. So my parents and grandparents are very instrumental in who I am as an adult, as a mom, and as a wife. But in addition to that, my siblings, they play a very important role in my life because they let me all the time pretend like I was the president, which I had aspired to be. I just want you all to know, and in my books, I aspired to be the first female president of the United States. That soon changed once I realized it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But I did set my sights on being the first Black senator in Kansas. So that's how I started in political science and communication. So I just want to start with that because I'm going to come back to that a little bit later in our discussion. So thinking about my childhood, some things that really stand out: work ethic, showing up, being loyal, and making sure that you demonstrate that grit, but in a very graceful way. So when I think about my childhood, it's really set me up to be right where I am today, here talking with you.
Well, hearing you walk through your family, it sounds like you had a lot of different examples of like you said, the work ethic, the grit, the determination, and I guarantee you sitting under that dryer in the beauty salon, you learned a lot about how to approach life just by way of the women who probably came through that scene as well. What is something that you remember from early on, a lesson that you might have learned in your childhood or in your early teen years that you didn't fully appreciate until you became an adult, until you started going on this journey of becoming the leader that you are today?
No, that's a great question, because that's a question that really, it's deep if you think about it. As an adult, I'm sitting here thinking about the 10-year-old Kalisha, what still permeates today. And really it's vision. The fact that as a child, we knew that we had to go to college. It was never a question. It was always, where are you going to college? As a child, we knew we had to work hard. We knew that nothing was going to be given to us. And more importantly, we knew that we were going to be successful. Now, I know that sounds so just like unbelievable to some people, but there was never a day of my life that I thought I wasn't going to be something. And I remember I said president and then I said senator, but when all of that changed, I had to reinvent myself in a different way. But it's that vision that started when I was a child. It was a vision that my parents instilled in us that helped me get to where I'm at today.
I love that, because when we think about vision, vision is more, it can serve as a North Star for us, even when times get really tough. So as we're thinking about you having vision as a child, knowing that it can serve as a North Star, I want to tie that to this concept around resilience, because sometimes we have to anchor ourselves in something in order to keep the faith, in order to be resilient. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of question. I want to know what you think leaders get wrong about resilience.
Well, I think that's a great question, because when we think about resilience, it's not something that you wake up with. You know, what builds resilience? Support, connection, someone being there to say they have your back and being able to give you a second chance if you don't meet the goal the first time. So that's building resilience. And for me, my story is a little bit different, because I didn't realize it was resilience when I was going through what I went through, and I'm going to share a little bit of a story with you all. But when I think back to that college Kalisha, it definitely was resilience. And it's because of that, once again, I have strong resilience today. So just imagine this, you go to college and you have a major in mind, and you've already declared your major. And once again, things might be different now, because I know this is 20 plus years ago, a little bit more. But declare your major and you meet your advisor, and instead of your advisor welcoming you into the program, they ask you why you chose the program. And they ask you, what are you going to do after you graduate? They ask you, why do you think you should be a part of this program? Now you can imagine, as a college student, a freshman, 17, that's a hard pill to swallow, knowing that I would be with this advisor for the next 4 years. Well, needless to say, I answered the questions. I had my mind set on being a political science major since I was 8 years old. And of course, I had this grand vision of being a senator. And I told him all of the things that I had practiced. So time went on, and that first semester of me in college was actually pretty stellar, great grades, made a lot of connections, and felt like I was part of the community. It wasn't until that second semester, where he was actually one of my professors, that things got tough. And when I tell you things got tough, he interrupted me when I asked questions. He graded me very, very tough, which I look back and say maybe it made me even stronger, that resilience piece. But the thing that really stood out was he was having Wednesday dinners at his house with all of the other majors except me. So just imagine that, freshman, political science major, and my advisor is intentionally excluding me from his house. Now, the one thing that I didn't mention to you all is I was the only person of color, I was the only woman, and my professor, he was about middle-aged, I'll just say that, and he had very strong values on where men and women should be in the political environment. Now, this isn't, once again, this is 20 plus years ago, and sometimes people say, you know, you could have reported that, but of course I wasn't thinking like that as a college student. I was thinking about, how am I going to graduate with this political science degree? So you all aren't going to believe this because I never mention it as a lead out, but I played basketball all the way through college. And it just so happened that this advisor's favorite sport was basketball. And this advisor had no idea that I played basketball for the college team. Can you imagine that? So it just was one of those days where my parents came and supported us at all of our events. And I'll just put it in perspective for all of you. My dad, he's about 6'5". This advisor was 5'3"-ish. So watching my dad approach the advisor, I was nervous, but I don't even know why I was nervous when I think back. I just didn't know exactly how the conversation was going to go. But leave it to my dad, building that connection, building that relationship. After the game, the professor came over to me and asked me to come to Wednesday dinner. And that really made a difference. Now, I still had some challenges. We didn't always see eye to eye, but it was because I didn't give up. We were able to find some connection that he became one of my actually biggest allies, and he helped me think differently. He helped me grow, and he helped me stretch beyond what I would have if maybe I didn't have to experience that. So I share that with all of you because I'm sure all of you can think back on a time where you might have felt excluded, you might have felt as though you didn't belong, and you might have had somebody that was an obstacle, but I'm just here to tell you, don't give up, keep pushing, and if anything, try to find something to connect on a personal level because that's what helped me. And luckily I did graduate with the political science degree, and that advisor actually put me in his honors program, and it turned out to be a huge, huge success.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because a lot of times when we're faced with something like that, we might be willing to just say, well, you know what? This person is just not going to be in my corner. Let me try to find another route. But you stuck with it. And you had someone by your side who was willing to go to bat for you, which is great. But you also had to have the mindset to not allow that one barrier or that one challenge steer you off path. And I love that we have that example of not allowing one person's judgment, one person's perception to move us into a different path when we know what our North Star is. We're going to keep along these same lines because there are moments where we overcome and there are moments where we don't. So I want to talk about a time where it didn't quite work out. And we know that we have all faced failure at some point. What's a setback that in your journey that just really rocked you? And how did you come back from that?
You all are waiting. Think about it. I want you all to think about a setback. For me, that setback still stings, but I do have a comeback, so I can share it with you today. And that setback, once again, college student, vision was going to be in law, was going to be a senator. And what college do you go to? Well, no one has to answer that. But I wanted to go to Stanford. So I had all of my sights set on Stanford University. I had the best references. I scored very high on my test scores. I was ready to go. And I had told everybody, I'm going to Stanford. I'm moving. Bye-bye, Kansas. I'll see you, when I graduate. And I will tell you, I didn't get in. Actually, I got a big letter that said, you're not accepted. Thank you for your interest. And it was so impersonal too. I used to keep that letter, but I actually got rid of it. That's just to show I got past it. But that was such a huge setback for me because it was the first time where I was told not only no, but I felt like I wasn't good enough. I felt like I wasn't smart enough. I felt like I wasn't prepared. And I had done everything. When I tell you everything, community service hours, staying up, writing letters, lobbying. I mean, I did walking the Capitol steps. I did so much, and I thought it was enough, but it wasn't. So what did I do? What do you do when you face a setback? Sulk. Well, no. I mean, I didn't party. I cried, felt sorry for myself. And it wasn't until a close friend of our family stopped by just to check on me. And they were upbeat, and they were like, well, what are you gonna do? And I was sitting there thinking, that's a good question. What am I gonna do? So that moment, at that one question, it shifted my entire career. It shifted my entire trajectory on where I'm at today. That next week, I decided to pursue an MBA. So I had to get new references. I had to take new tests. I had to research different schools. And I had to tell everybody that I was staying in Kansas. So I was embarrassed. But I'll tell you, not only did I overcome the embarrassment, but I was accepted. I was able to finish my MBA. And that's where the comeback starts, because during that time, as I mentioned, I was a college athlete. I was like, I have to do additional work. I can't just go to these classes. I'll get bored, because as you know, a student athlete, your days are filled. Even if you're in choir, if you're in theater, your days are full when you're in college. So I decided to get a job. And what do you know? I picked up the Topeka Capital Journal. That's a newspaper for people who aren't familiar. I picked up the Topeka Capital Journal, and I looked for a job. And I mailed the resume, and they called me on a rotary phone, no cell phones back then, and they set up interviews with me, 3 companies. And what do you know? All 3 of those companies offered me a job. And at that time, if you all are familiar with BNSF, we have a headquarters we have an office in Topeka, we have an office in Minnesota, and we had an office in Minnesota, and we had an office in Fort Worth. And for me, I went to the Topeka office, and I was hands down ready to say yes. And I accepted the role. They paid for my MBA. That's another perk. And now look, 20 plus years later, I'm sitting here talking to all of you about that pivotal moment of that setback that eventually became this comeback.
It's incredible. Yeah. And we're going to move to talking through that comeback, because man, what a comeback it has been, given the career that you had. But you said something in your answer that I just want to dig a little bit deeper on, because you said, what did I do when I got that letter? And you didn't immediately go to, okay, what's next? You gave yourself some time to sulk, and you gave yourself some time to feel. Can you talk to us about how important it is there are times where we just have to sit in those moments and know that this isn't what we wanted, and we have to be able to give ourselves that time to process that. How important is it for us as leaders, as humans, to acknowledge what we are experiencing when a failure does happen, so that we can be ready for the comeback?
That's a really good question, Tracy. And I know that this answer might not be the gold star answer, and this might not be the A+ answer for some, but my advice would be that God never makes mistakes, and know that you're exactly where you're supposed to be at that moment. And if you don't learn that lesson, if you don't build that resiliency, something else is around the corner. So you can't give up. You have to be able to say, maybe not this time, but next time. You have to ask yourself, what could I have done differently? You have to ask yourself, what lessons did I learn? But it's so important that we acknowledge how we feel, what we experience, and know that's what's really developing you into the person that not only you are today, but into the person that you're going to be in the future.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to take that detour.
No problem.
Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Thinking about your career at BNSF, and you walked our students through your incredible journey that you've had at BNSF, and you all are going to hear a little bit more about all of the different roles that Kalisha has held. It's absolutely incredible to know that she's made so many different pivots. So I want to be able to touch on that journey very quickly that you've taken. And in the process, I think that's gonna set us up for the next portion of this conversation around preparation and what it means to be ready for those moments that come. So can you give the audience just a quick overview of your career journey at BNSF? I think you have to hear it. It's fascinating. You have to hear it. Okay.
Tracy, this is why you have to have friends like Tracy. I would tell you, if you don't have friends like Tracy and Shannon, go find some. And I say that because I just as we had mentioned, we talked to a group of students earlier today, and I won't go into as much detail as I did with them because I went into the detail with them because I wanted to point out some of those transferable skills, some of those hard decisions, some of those pivots that I had to make. But with you all, I'll keep it brief because we do have some other questions we want to get to. So when I started with BNSF, I started in accounting, and I started in car accounting. And no, that's not counting cars. Everyone says we're out there counting cars. No, we have a full system on how we pay for cars that run on the railroad. So I started in car accounting, and I was the only woman. I was the only person of color. Generationally, the next person was about 25 years older than I was, and they worked for the union. So I walked into a situation that I had never been in before, but I will tell you that was one of the most rewarding experiences of my career because I learned how to connect with people on a different level. And if you remember, I learned that from my parents. I learned that from my grandparents, the connection piece. And as a result of that, we did some groundbreaking things while I was in that role. But who all in here remembers 2022 Enron? Raise your hand. Well, as a result of Enron, we then had to put in controls in order to comply with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And guess who volunteered for that? Me. And I will tell you, I volunteered not knowing the gravity of the assignment, but because I knew I would learn so much more about the company, and I knew that I would be interacting with leaders in the company that were at much higher levels. And as a result of that, I did. We successfully completed that assignment, and I was promoted pretty quickly in my career. Well, of course, what's the result of good work? More work. So I was able to get more work, more people. Very fortunate, very happy about that experience. And we were able to do some more groundbreaking things. And when I say groundbreaking, we implemented new systems. We made so many efficiencies to save millions of dollars. It was just really an exciting time. And because of those results, I was asked to move to Minnesota. And I will tell you, I hesitated because I didn't know anyone in Minnesota. Who all's been to Minnesota here? Okay, great place. I love Minnesota. But I will tell you, I was a little bit nervous about going because I was by myself. But I will tell you, when I moved to Minnesota, my role had expanded. And I had a team that was in Minnesota, a team that was in Kansas, and a team that was in Fort Worth. So this is my finance days. And as you all know, when you're in finance, there's really no gray area. It's pretty much black or white, right or wrong. There's no gray. So that was where I spent a lot of my time before given the opportunity to move to Fort Worth. And I was part of our first SAP implementation. If anyone is familiar with SAP implementations, you know that was the hardest 3 years of my life. And people ask me, how did you get that role? And I have to remind them, I have a master's in information systems. They're like, oh, okay. Not that that even matters, but I just tell you all that because sometimes credentials do matter to certain people. But when you get in there and you're able to do the job and you're able to deliver, they forget about that very quickly. So I just want you all to know from all of these stages of my career, I always had the degree in order to have entry into some of these spaces. So after the SAP implementation, you can imagine I tried to get out there as fast as I could. And luckily for me, because of my work product, my networking, I was given an opportunity to transition into our marketing department, working for my supervisor from Minnesota. Imagine that, the connection piece. And because of that relationship, because of my work product, I moved into marketing and was there for about 7 years of my career. And I did share this with the students. Best time of my career, being customer facing, any time for you to be successful in any role, understanding your business, understanding your products, understanding your customers' needs, understanding what drives innovations, that is what's gonna set you apart. And for me, that was just a fantastic part of my career. But the downside of that was I didn't want to travel 3 days a week because, of course, if you're in marketing, guess what you have to do? Go visit your customers. And what I decided to do was move into operations. So I moved into operations. And once again, I'm saying I moved, but this was a lot of orchestrating with leaders in the organization. It was me proving myself over and over again. I had my sales pitch down. I had my work product ready. I had my career development plan printed. So I was ready. And every single time I volunteered for something new, every time I asked for a stretch assignment, I got it. I was in operations for a while, and then I realized 24/7, being at the beck and call of anyone who calls you, pages you, I needed to do something different. I have a family now. I'm a mom. So I moved into strategic sourcing. And I thought I was going to be there for a while, but of course, another opportunity presented itself, and it was this one. And I will tell you, I did not have this on my career trajectory. I had never aspired to be in human resources, but I said yes because of the people and because I'm passionate about change, and I want to make sure that everyone has a full opportunity to meet their full potential. And the one thing about this role is I'm able to say that every single day that we make sure that all of our team members can reach their full potential, they have equal access to opportunities, tools, and resources, and they're going to be treated with dignity and respect. And that's why I said yes to this role, and that's why I'm still here.
I told y'all it was fascinating. Let's just recap, okay? So you went from car accounting to finance, then you led the SAP implementation, then you went to operations, then I'm missing one. Marketing.
It was a marketing.
Marketing, and then
strategic
and then
sourcing.
strategic
sourcing. Now,
Yeah.
of course, please don't quiz me on any of those things because there's a lot that goes into each one of those roles. And of course, if we had more time, I could share with you. Actually, you can ask me anything about those roles, and I can share it with you. But it just goes back to those transferable skills. It goes back to building on each experience and making sure that you're ready for the next, even if you feel like you're not qualified, even if you feel like you're not prepared. But knowing that I have a learner mentality, my supervisor will tell you that. I have the grit, and I believe in myself, and I know that if I show up and I put in my all, there's not too much that I don't think I can't do.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because with all of these different roles that you had, you didn't necessarily, you had the degrees to help you with that, but there's also a different level of readiness that you have to step into something new. And there's no faking being ready. So what is your personal formula for showing up ready, even when you're still in that learner role, but still being able to step in and say, I've got this, I'm taking command, and I'm going to do the best that I can?
Oh my gosh, I love that question because, my personal success formula hasn't really changed over the course of my life. I'm sure you all are familiar with the 3 Ps. So when you talk about prepare, plan, practice, but I also add pivot. Because the one thing that I've learned over the course of my career and in life, things are gonna happen unexpectedly, and you have to be ready. So for me, I will tell you, especially being a leader, being someone that has to have the right answers, being a person that has to make sure that they're inspiring and motivating people, the preparation piece is so critical. And I tell you all this because I'm going to share a story about there was a time in my career where I wasn't this put together. I know. It's hard to believe. There was a time in my career where I would wing it. Who in here has winged something before? You know, they're like, I need you to do it. Got it. Here you go. And then afterward, you're like, ooh, I should have spent more time on that. So I learned that luckily early in my career, early. And what ended up happening is when you're in these roles, you're the voice of your team. You're the voice of your objectives. You're the voice of your results. And I say that because in different organizations, and I'm sure here at TCU, you have branded materials, you have frameworks that everyone uses. BNSF is no different. We use certain slides, we use certain colors, we even use certain fonts. But that's very important when it comes to branding. And for me, I was given the opportunity early on to present to our senior leadership team, and I knew it was a big deal because that 15 minutes of fame is going to either catapult you to the next level or it's not. And lucky for me, my leader at that time spent an enormous amount of time helping me understand the big picture, helping me think beyond the question that was being posed, helping me understand this product that you're producing right now, it could end up anywhere. So you better make sure that you don't have any typos, you have the right font, you have the right branding, and make sure that you're not filling the airspace with uhs, ums, and you don't knows. And I was a bit taken aback. I'm just being completely transparent with you all. I'm like, who does that? And he said, just listen. And sure enough, he spent time with me going over the presentation. He helped me talk to other leaders in the organization so I could get different perspectives to really show that I was taking a thoughtful approach to this presentation, which he then told me, discussion. This is discussion, not a presentation. And I will tell you that 15 minutes, it went remarkably well. And you can't say that all the time when you walk out of these meetings. If you have ever been in these meetings and you've been asked a question and you've been stumped, or you're just like, how did I know that? Or you say the wrong answer and then it comes back that you didn't even know what you were talking about. I mean, these are all real life things. And because he took the time to prepare with me, to practice with me, I was really prepared for that moment and I felt so confident. And as a result of that, I continued to progress in my career. Not saying that I wouldn't have, I mean, I'm sure I could have recovered, but I'm just telling you all that when you have moments like that, spend the time on the planning, spend the time on preparing. And then of course, if a question's asked or if an experience is mentioned that you don't know much about, don't wing it. Just say, let me get back to you. Because I'll tell you, those pivotal moments, and I say the pivot, it really will make or.
I love this story because it also shows your willingness to sit there and learn and take in the knowledge and the wisdom from your supervisor. And that's all a part of our growth, is when we're willing to hear what others have, the feedback that others have for us. So I want to keep on this journey of growth, because I think it's so important for us to talk about some ways that we can take ownership of that. Talk to us about, how you've taken ownership of your own development. We know that you received your MBA, you went back and got an MIS degree, but beyond the formal education, what are some ways that you've taken ownership of your growth, and why was it important for you to not wait for other people to tell you that you needed to develop in this way, but for you to take that step on your own?
Oh, that's a really rich question, Tracy. Who in here has ever thought about what's next?
Every day.
Every day. Every day. And I say that because for me, as I mentioned, from a child, I was taught that education was the key. And I still believe that. And when I say education, not just from a degree perspective, but if that includes upskilling, if that includes getting a trade, if that includes learning a new language, these are all things that are very important, and they'll make you more marketable, but also more successful in your roles. So that's one piece of it. But when I think about, just kind of the bigger, the bigger question, I never am satisfied. And my husband probably is like, that is so true. And I say that, I'm being completely honest today with you all, because when I think about things I wish people would have said to me when I was a college student, that is okay to continue to want to do more. It's okay to want to continue to grow. It's okay to step out of that box or that framework that someone else might have designed for you. It's okay. And for me, being so confident in myself and knowing that if you give me the opportunity to do something, I'm going to deliver for you, that's my firm belief. Now, I know that as I've gotten a little bit older, energy isn't what it used to be, time isn't what it used to be. So I've had to pivot that thought process into what's the most important. But I will tell you, I don't let anyone tell me something that I can't do. And if I'm faced with a challenge, I'm going to give it my all in order to overcome that challenge.
I love that you just put it out there that you're never satisfied because I think that gives a lot of us in this room it gives us permission to say, you know what, yes, I constantly want to make sure that I'm doing the next thing and continuing to grow and continuing to live at what I call at my highest and best self. When we think about that though, I think when people approach life that way, there's this view that we have of being able to see the moments that we really need to take advantage of. And some of those moments can just really change everything for us. What was a moment that you had, a time where you recognized an opportunity that most people might have missed? And how did that change some things for you in your journey?
That's something I have touched on, and that goes back to when I was approached about moving from Kansas to Minnesota. That was a big step for me, especially being single, my family being in Kansas. And that was one of those times where I had to really sit back and say, do you really want to do this? And if you don't do it, what's next? And I will tell you, by me stepping out of my fear zone, me saying yes to a new opportunity, it really set the stage for, once again, me moving to Fort Worth, me getting other opportunities, me meeting my husband, me having a family. So me saying yes to something that was a little bit scary, a little bit unfamiliar, it really is what's, helped me get to where I am today.
Thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we have to say yes, even if it feels a little bit trembly inside. Saying yes can truly create an incredible new opportunity in so many different ways. So I appreciate you sharing that moment with us. You also talked about how, as time has progressed, how you now have to prioritize things a little bit differently. And we, in this room, we talk a lot about, well, what does it look like to balance work and life? And I will tell you, I'm of the mindset that whole thing is a myth. So what's your view on that? I mean, does it really exist for you?
I think that's a question that everyone's going to have a different response to, just because at some moments you feel like you have a lot of balance, and then others, things could feel a lot of out of balance. And for me, it's not necessarily about if there's a balance. It's about if I'm remaining true to myself. And I do that by really three golden rules that we have. And the first is prioritization. What's important at the moment? And that's going to change over the course of your life. I mean, whether you're a mom, whether you have aging parents, whether you have kids in different activities, whether you're working 2 or 3 jobs, your priorities are going to change. So I encourage all of you to make sure that you prioritize what's important. The second thing for me is unapologetically saying no. So someone can call me and ask me if I would do this, or can I volunteer here, or can I serve in this role? And I say no. And that is definitely hard at first, but I encourage all of you to get comfortable with saying no without providing a reason for your no, because it's your life. You only get one of them, and you have to make sure that what you're doing is adding value to you, and it's something that you want to do. And then the third one And I'm sure that, all of you are sitting there wondering, yeah, I probably can prioritize better. I definitely can say no. But I encourage all of you to be in the moment. And when I say be in the moment, like all of you here today, I'm looking across the room and all of you all are smiling and nodding your head, and I appreciate that because being in the moment is so important. And for me, if I'm at a kid's game, you're gonna see me cheering in the stands. If I am at a show choir event, you're gonna see me videotaping. If I'm at work and I have people who work with me, I try not to look at my phone. I try not to interrupt their train of thought by looking off. I try not to be disruptive to anyone else, but be 100% in that moment. Because the one thing we know is you only get that moment one time. And that might be with your kids, that might be with your spouse, that might be at work, but you only get that moment one time. And I'm telling you all this from experience because, no exaggeration, every weekend in our house, we have between 8 to 10 activities to choose from. We have to divide and conquer. And what we say is, what's the most important? Who's gonna be where? And I'll see you when we're done. Now, the one thing that probably you didn't ask Tracy, but the one thing that's so important to me is my family, that's my non-negotiable. That's the area where if I have to choose between going to a community service event or going to my son's baseball game, y'all will see me at the baseball diamond. So that's where I'm at in life right now.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's because I think a lot of us in the room can say that we learned that a little bit later in terms of setting those non-negotiables and what those boundaries should be. So I love that the students are hearing that from you right now and learning what it means to set the boundaries that they have that align with their values so that they can always continue to have that North Star and that alignment that's needed to prioritize what's happening in their lives. We all know too that even with all of the prioritization, even with all of the plans that we make, that sometimes life just comes at you and it can come at you pretty hard. Let's talk a little bit about that because we know that even being in this role, it doesn't exempt you from the hard moments that you might experience professionally and or personally. What has kept you anchored when you've hit some of those hard moments in life? What do you lean on the most?
I will tell you all, that's a really personal question for me because who remembers COVID 2020? Raise your hand. Okay, I just want to make sure we're starting from an even playing field. For me, not only did we have COVID, who remembers George Floyd's murder? Okay, who also remembers sometimes feeling isolated and maybe a little bit lonely? Anybody? So that's kind of a universal feeling for all of us during that period, and we weren't exempt. But during that time, our family was hit with something a little bit different, and that was my sister, at the age of 33, died of breast cancer, and my brother-in-law, at the age of 43, a month earlier, Thanksgiving Day, died of colon cancer. And I can't make these type of stories up. I can't say that we had a plan. I can't say that we were prepared. But I can tell you that it was my faith, it was my family and my friends that kept me anchored. And the reason I say that is because during that time, me and my husband, we had one son at the time, he was 7. And we then took custody of my 2 nieces and nephew. So our house went from 3 to 6 overnight. Now, mind you, we both said we only wanted this one little guy because we knew how much time it would take, but we knew we had to step up and take my nieces and nephew, and we did. And I tell you all that because that was one of the first times in our life where both me and my husband, we had to lean in on a circle, we had to lean in on a community, we had to lean in on a network that we didn't even know that existed. And when I tell you that community and that network activated for us, it was by the grace of God we made it through. And I say that because there are going to be times in all of your lives, if you haven't experienced them already, where you do have to lean into your circle, you do have to lean into your community. And I even think about the time that we're in right now, where information is coming at us so quickly. We have to make those quick decisions. We all have our different opinions, but just know it's so important to lean into your network and to be there for one another at this time. And I will tell you, we made it through. Our two nieces are gone and out of the house, so we're down to just the two boys. But it was a lot of learning, a lot of growing, and a lot of sacrifices that we had to make during that time. But I will tell you, those 3 F's, my faith, my family, and my friend network, our friend network, is what carried us through that time. And even today, those same people, they still show up for us. They still want to know how things are going. And I don't think that philosophy will ever change for me.
Thank you for your willingness to share that, because a lot of times as leaders, there are moments where we have to step into our vulnerability and be willing to show some of how we make it through some of those hard times. I'm curious to know, how do leaders create a space where they and their people know that it's okay to show up and not have to choose between showing up strong and showing up real when those times get hard?
I want to give the microphone to my team. I definitely, I think it's and both. I mean, in all of our lives, all of us are very different, and our need meter is very different. Some people want to hear words of affirmation. Some people want a hug. Some people want chocolates. Some people want you to send them DoorDash. I mean, I'm just telling you, everybody's needs are different. But when it comes to being a leader, it's about knowing your people. And it's about asking them how you can help and not assuming. Because I will tell you, I've had some leaders in the past, some really good leaders who are good at that connection, but I've had some other leaders that aren't so good. And that still resonates with me. And I can tell you that my approach in making sure I understand the needs of my team, it's worked. Now, of course, there are some people who might not want to work for me again, but the majority do. But I will tell you that as a leader, that's that secret sauce to making sure that that person is not going to look at the clock and say, it's time for me to go. They're going to say, how much more do we have to do? That's that leader who you're going to say, do you mind doing a little bit extra? And they've already said, I got it done. That's the difference maker there. So for me, the connection piece is so important, and really making sure that you get to know your people.
I love that. So we're getting ready to open the floor up for questions in just a moment, but you talked a lot about connection. You talk a lot about the power of the building of relationships, maintaining those, et cetera. And one that I know in our own conversations that we've talked about is the relationship when it comes to allyship. And I want to make sure we touch on that before we open up for Q&A, because I think you and I have both seen the power of that work in our lives, and even more so in moments where we know that we need to stand in the gap for people. So can you talk a little bit more about when someone has put either their name, their credibility, their own reputation on the line for you, and how important was that for your own journey?
Isn't Tracy good? Y'all, isn't Tracy good? I love that question. And it's such a good question for me, because I'm in an industry, the railroad industry. There's 6 Class 1 railroads. And in our industry, we have about 10% women, round up or down a little bit. So for me to be at BNSF for 20 plus years and be in leadership is a really big deal. And it's something that I'm very proud of, and I definitely know it's a privilege. But with that, there were some bumps along the way. And I've shared this story with our actual team members because I want them to know it's not always easy. And for me, it happened when I moved into marketing, as I told you all, one of my favorite roles at BNSF. But I went on a customer visit with my supervisor, and my supervisor, he was a white male. And he was very supportive of me. He definitely let me lead in spaces. And when I say lead in spaces, lead the customer meeting, present the information, ask questions, feel as though I am the person commanding that room. And that matters to leaders. Leaders, that does matter. Well, it just so happened we went to a customer visit, and in the room, I walk in, and another theme, I was the only woman and I was the only person of color. And people ask me that all the time, how does that feel? And I'm like, I know how to navigate that space now. But it took a minute to learn how to navigate that space. So for me, during that customer visit, we go around the room and do introductions. And as you all know, I mean, I won't test anyone in here, but my name is Kalisha. It's pronounced Kalisha. I've gotten all type of variations of it over the course of my life, but in customer meetings, it's so important for people to get your name right. You can all imagine a time where someone's gotten your name wrong, or they've said something to you that you're like, I just told you that my favorite food is a hamburger. Why'd you bring me salmon? You know, it just shows people aren't listening. And for me at that moment, the CEO of that company said, well, can I call you Kay? And I had never been put in a situation like that in my life, literally ever in my life, but not at work. Not at work. And it just so happened, my supervisor, he said, no, you will not call her Kay. You will call her either Kalisha or Miss Patrick. That was my maiden name at the time. And I breathed such a sigh of relief. My face was bright pink, and all of the things that you can imagine was running through my head because I didn't know where that conversation was going to go. But that supervisor not only stood up for me, that supervisor gave me the confidence, and he showed me that I belonged in that room. Just imagine if that supervisor would have sat there and let that man say, I'm gonna call you Kay, and for the rest of that meeting, he called me Kay, and I was leading the meeting. How many people in here, by a show of hands, have ever felt that way? Felt like, how dare you not get it right? And for me, at that very moment, I would run through a wall for that man. I would stay late for that man. And I even thanked him. And what he said to me is still, I hear his voice in my head. He said, you don't have to thank me. You're always going to be respected here. And that mattered.
That is such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that.
And he's probably on the Zoom.
Oh, good.
So I'm not going to say his name, but I do
Yeah.
appreciate it, and he knows that it really made a difference.
It's incredible. I think my mom is on there too, and she was probably like, Tracy, fix your face. Because when you said he wanted to call you Kay, just... But I mean, there is power in our names. And there's meaning in our names, and I am thankful that your supervisor at the time recognized that not only there's power and meaning, but there's respect behind the use of our names. And so thank you for sharing that moment with us. I want you all to get ready for your questions. As you are getting ready for them, are there any last PowerPoints or tidbits that you would like to share with the group?
I hope I've shared a lot that you all can walk away with and say, wow, this was worth my hour and a half and then your hour commute on the road. But I will just say, you know, I'm really honored to be here. I take leadership very seriously. I take showing up in our community very seriously. And having all of you in the room today really echoes so many things that I think about every day, and that is we all matter, we all can make a difference, and this series, Grit and Determination, it's the way that you can shape your world. So just know everything I said today, 100% factual. You can fact check it. If you want to learn more, if you want to talk to me, Kalisha.Holland@BNSF is my email address, and I'm just happy to be here.
Okay. So the floor is now open for questions from the audience.
Okay, so you
I was going to say.
And if you don't have a question and would like just to make a statement, because there's so many people in the room, that's okay as well.
Oh, here's one right here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Carter from Idaho National Laboratory, and I serve with Ms. Holland on the I4CP Advisory Board. So, question for you, my friend, is right now we're in a crossroads in our country with how people are feeling about certain elements of our work. From your experience, how do we not lose ground?
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for coming. You know, that's a really good question, because I think it hits us all very close to home when we talk about the importance of humanity. When we all think about, once again, I've asked multiple times, have you experienced this? Have you heard this before? There's connectivity within all of us, and being not only connected to people, it really helps your heart open. And I know that especially in the business world, that's probably a hard pill to swallow, because we're about making dollars and cents. But it's the humanity piece that we all have to continue to lean into in order to make sure that we move forward and we don't move backwards.
Kalisha, and thank you again for your vulnerability and transparency and just your journey. For those who don't know, you know, in making career decisions in life, you have a lot of opportunities that have been presented to you. Can you walk us through just even the mythology of your last decision from going from ops to the role that you are now? What was that decision process look like? Because there was a lot of unknowns, right? And just to share with the students and just people here, you know, what went into that decision, and, you know, what has been the risk versus reward in that?
Now, Shannon's a close friend of mine, and she was one of many people in this room that I talked to. And we actually have my, as I mentioned, our senior vice president and chief HR officer in the room, and she will be the first to tell you I was very thoughtful before I took this role. And the real driving force behind it went back to my why. And of course, I can crunch numbers, I can design systems, I can create innovative solutions, I can do all of those things. But the real reason why I said yes, and the real reason why I'm still in this role, is because of the people. And as I've learned, people are the most important asset at any company, at any university, and of course, you know, our family. So for me, the risk, not knowing that we would be here, and I will preface that because I don't know. I didn't know we would be here right now, but I will tell you, I'm so happy personally to be in this moment, because I know I can make a difference, and I know that I matter. And I know that if it's not even just in my corporate space, but in my community space, we're strong, and we're going to work towards a better tomorrow together.
First of all, much thanks to TCU for having these series. They're so needed, and I am literally having a wonderful time listening in to Kalisha, and I'm so proud of you as a friend, first and foremost. I've been knowing Kalisha for a very long time. The question I have for you is, has there ever been a moment in your career where you did not feel supported by a supervisor that you directly worked for, and how did you handle that situation? I know you spoke about situations when you were in college, but within your career, have you ever had that experience, and how did you navigate through that?
No, I mean, if I sat here and said every supervisor that I had was great, you all would say, I thought you said that you were 100% honest, Kalisha. So I have had a difficult supervisor before, but I will tell you what I uncovered after working for that individual and then moving on it wasn't me, it was about helping them understand what was going on. And I know that sounds very basic, but sometimes, especially in leadership positions, when you have so many things coming at you, when you have so much stuff going on, you start making assumptions. That's where that bias creeps in. You start doing things without knowing all the facts at times because you're trying to deliver. And that supervisor was one of those people who would make quick decisions without sometimes knowing all the facts. And it was one of the hardest times of my life, not the SAP project, but it was one of the hardest times of my life because I was always doing the cleanup. I was always going back to fix. I was always going back to reframe. And how I was able to navigate that, besides moving into a different role, was really trying to, you all hear this, the connection piece, asking that person, what can I do in order to help you be successful? What can I do that I'm not doing right now? And then, of course, reminding them that we were all in it together. And I will tell you, it wasn't, looking back, it wasn't as bad as it could have. It could have been, because I've heard some stories about some really rough supervisors. But for me, it was really recognizing what that person needed. And that's how we were able to be successful. And to this day, still one of my closest mentors. And not because they made my life difficult at that moment. It's because it taught me to think a little bit differently. It taught me to appreciate different leadership styles. And it also showed me what I wouldn't want to be as a leader.
Hi, my name's Caitlin Purdom. I'm a sophomore from Manhattan, Kansas. So Kansas Girls
Go
Unite.
Kansas.
Yeah. You kind of touched on how mentorship played a role in your career success. How would you recommend college students find that mentorship or find people to pour into them?
Well, the first thing about mentorship is making sure that you trust that person and that you can be authentically yourself with that person so that they can give you real feedback. But in addition to that, I encourage people to find mentors that have different perspectives and different life experiences than them. Because as I mentioned earlier, when talking to the students, the best way to think broader, the best way to think more deeply is being put in situations where you don't know the answer, where you have to listen, where you have to, really open yourself up to learn. So best mentors in my life, they're different from me, they have different experiences, and they definitely are always there to listen.
All right, I think we have one more question down front, and then.
Okay. Hi. Thank you. My name is Dynasty again. My question is, I wrote it down. Hold on. Thank you. Okay. What strategies and initiatives have you found most effective in fostering a culture of belonging and inclusion within your organization that you're working for, as well as just in environments?
Oh no, that's a good question. And in this role, I've mentioned, just our equality statement as far as making sure everyone has equal opportunity to reach their full potential. They have access to tools, resources, development opportunities, and of course being treated with dignity and respect. But above that, we do have, at our company, we have employee resource groups. And those employee resource groups are engineered for our people to network, to connect, and to develop. And that's something that is open to all. And it's a space where we really lean into giving people something else above and beyond just their daily work. And we firmly believe, when we start talking about bringing these communities together, that's when the real magic happens. That's where you're able to feel like you do belong. That is where you walk away feeling like you are included. So that's something that we do at BNSF. And then of course in the community, making sure that these different groups and these different organizations have broad experiences, people that have come from different backgrounds, and then of course have a diverse experience set.
Well, I just want to again thank you, Kalisha, for joining us today, and thank you for being so willing to share your journey with us in an open and candid way. I think that's one of the best ways that we can learn, is when people are willing to show more of who they are and from where they've come, so that we can learn from those experiences ourselves. So can we give Kalisha a round of applause, please?